Hey guys, today we are checking out the H Calorie Toolbox Diesel Heater, Generation 2. That's next. If you're wanting to continue camping and overlanding out in the cold temperatures, a diesel heater is something that you might look at investing in. The H Calorie Diesel Heater is a pretty practical and affordable option to get nice heat into your rooftop tent. This is a toolbox model and it actually resembles the Pelican cases. And so this is a nice version that has the fuel tank built into the unit as well as the diesel heater. Opening it up, you can see the tank up here filled with diesel as well as the actual diesel heater unit here. The nice thing about this model is everything's already integrated and it's ready to go. All you need is to plug it in and get your diesel inside the tank. This is a Generation 2 model, so it's an upgrade compared to what they presented last year with the original toolbox heater. So let's check it out in a bit more detail. When the weather gets cold, one of the best options to keep you outside is to have a portable heater. Now there are several heaters you can look at. Many use the traditional buddy heater, and I have for several years as well. But the problem is they produce a moist heat, as well as producing fumes such as carbon monoxide. So having that in your tent is not ideal, and not to mention it's also an open flame, which isn't the best, especially when you have sleeping bags and different things like that. Moist heat can really lead to condensation issues in your tent, so you don't want to go that route. So having a diesel heater is really the best option for overlanding. A diesel heater will be able to produce a dry heat, and also it's going to stay outside of your tent. Therefore, any exhaust or anything like that is staying outside rather than in your tent. Another thing is with a diesel heater, you don't have to worry about having any open flames or anything that could catch fire. The problem with diesel heaters is they can be pricey, but H Calorie makes owning a diesel heater a lot more realistic at an affordable price. It's portable, it's powerful, and it's also simple to use. There's no open flames, produces dry heat. You can use this in an RV, a car, house, or even a tent. I personally use this on my rooftop tent for my winter camping, and it's something I'll never go without. This here is the H Calorie Toolbox2 Diesel Heater, and it's my favorite heater that they've come out with so far. Now, when you get your diesel heater, you will get the whole unit, which is in here, as well as a box of several accessories. So we're gonna look at what's in there. First off, you get a 4-inch flange as well as a 4-inch ducting. You also get a basic exhaust as well as some flex tubing for that. You also get an intake muffler as well as an intake tube that you would attach together. They also give you several clamps as well as attachment tools so you can put those things all together. You also get this 12-volt charging supply that you can then connect to a battery to power on your unit. And something new this year is they also give you a DC to AC power adapter as well. This is a 10 amp 12-volt power supply, and it's a nice welcome addition to this unit, which didn't come with Generation 1. They also give you the H Calorie manual, which also gives you a lot of in-depth information on how to properly use your unit. It came with some nice welcome upgrades, such as a bigger tank, which is 6 liters as opposed to 5 in the Generation 1. You also have a bigger, more efficient and powerful engine. Generation 2 also has what they called automatic altitude adjustment. And what this does is it detects your altitude and automatically adjusts the performance of the engine to give you the best efficiency at your given altitude. The display is also bigger and more simplistic. Paired with your phone, you also have an app that is more smarter and also user-friendly. And the plug insert port here is also slightly different to where you can plug it going up as opposed to down in the previous version. Looking at Generation 2 and Generation 1 side by side, you can see there's some noticeable differences. Both have nice grab handles for portability as well as these locking clips to lock it all together. As you can see, the casing for Generation 2 is slightly bigger and taller as well. And that's because Generation 2 is actually accommodating for an internal tank, which Generation 1 didn't have. For Generation 1, you actually had to mount it externally, and we'll talk about some of the issues that caused. Looking at the front of the right side of it, you can see you have your intake tube here on the bottom, as well as a larger air intake. On the left side here, you have your exhaust ports here, and this is actually a reinforced exhaust on Generation 2. And then the opening for the fresh air outlet, this is where the heat would come out, is actually bigger on Generation 2 as well. This is going to be 3.5 inch, where on Generation 1 was only 3 inches. So because you have a bigger opening, you can have heat come out quicker and warm up your tent even faster. Opening up, we can see what's inside Generation 2 and compare that a little bit to Generation 1. The big difference, obviously, is the internal tank that you have on Generation 1. This is a 6-liter tank as opposed to the 5-liter that came with Generation 1. Now, Generation 1 was external, and you had to manually drill it and attach your fuel lines as well, which actually limited the use for some people. From my experience, those are prone to leaking, as well as they could easily damage because the fuel lines were external, where you see on Generation 2, that's all internal and protected. Another thing with Generation 1 having the tank external, with having that on one side, it actually made it a little tippy-toppy, and if you hit a little bump or it just had a slightest breeze, it could easily knock over the whole unit. Where with this, it's a little bit more stacked and it's more well balanced. Having the internal tank on Generation 1 really is a big game changer for me because it makes it more accessible to more people. It's simpler to get started right away. It's already pre-assembled, drilled, and fuel lines attached. So really, you can get started right out of the box. Below the tank on Generation 2, you have your heater engine as well. Now comparing it to Generation 1, you can see the engine on Generation 2 is bigger and more powerful. Generation 2 runs at 5 to 8 kilowatts of power, where Generation 1 is only limited to 5 kilowatts of power. This makes Generation 2 38% more efficient. Also paired with the bigger gas tank, you can have up to 50 hours of runtime. Another thing is Generation 2 also runs smoother and quieter compared to Generation 1. Below the engine on the left side, you can also see you have your exhaust pipe that is also shielded and insulated. On the right side, you have your fuel pump as well as some fuel lines as well as some electronics. Now let's talk about the specs of Generation 2. It is 19.2 inches long by 7.9 inches in width and 14.9 inches tall. It weighs in at close to 21 pounds, so not ultralight by any means, but also still portable. It runs off 12 volts of power, which can come by either your DC battery hookup, or you can also use your DC to AC power plug adapter. I prefer the AC to DC power plug adapter because initially it can take up some amps to really get the heater started. On the battery, that can pose a little bit of issues in the cold, but off this AC DC adapter, that can really help it to be able to start easier. And this plug is rated at 10 amps as well. Let's talk about the fuel. Obviously, this is a diesel heater, so it runs off diesel, not gasoline. And as you can see, I do have some diesel in here. The fuel tank is 6 liters, so you're getting an additional liter compared to Generation 1. Paired with the more efficient engine, this leads to longer runtime, and on the low settings, it can run up to 50 hours. H Calorie says that the diesel consumption is between 0.036 to 0.1 gallons an hour. And that's just crazy good considering how long this can run for. The fuel pump has also been upgraded on Generation 2, and it's a little less noisy when you get the ticks. And once the unit is running strong, the tick of the fuel pump is pretty much unnoticeable. Let's talk about this casing. This casing is really nice. I like that it keeps it all in one unit. And it's a heat-resistant kind of plastic that kind of resembles those Pelican cases. Now, this isn't the same material as those Pelican cases. Pelican cases are going to be a lot more durable, so don't treat this one like it. This is mainly made to keep everything together and protect it. It can still chip and break, and it's the same kind of material you found in the casing of Generation 1. I do like this casing because it keeps everything in one organized place. Now, there are various ways you can control this unit. As you see, you do have this nice display screen on the top. Now, this display screen has also been upgraded from Generation 1. It's a lot more simplistic with just some touch buttons. But in my opinion, the visibility and brightness is a lot better on Generation 2. It's also more secure, but still detachable if you do need to detach it. Another thing that they give you is this remote key fob, and this is nice because you can adjust it remotely from inside your tent with just this. It's also pretty basic with just an on and off switch, as well as some plus or minus to increase or decrease your heat. Another cool thing is you can attach this via Bluetooth to your phone using the H Calorie app. This is H Calorie's own app that they designed for use with Generation 2 compared to Generation 1 where they use some third-party app. So it's a lot more accurate and more useful to use for this specific unit. The app also gives you a ton of adjustable things that you can use to change the settings on your device. On the app, you can get a lot more details as well as specs of the unit. The app also gives you multiple modes that you can select from to really customize your experience. You have heat mode, which gives you a range of of 1 to 10 ratios, and you can select the given heat. The higher the number, the higher the heat. When I first get to camp and set up my tent, what I do is I put it on 10 to really heat up my tent really fast. And then when I'm actually spending time in there, I'll go all the way down to 1 or 2 just to maintain that heat. It also has timer mode, and you can give a time on when to run and when to turn off. It also has temperature mode, which you can set a temperature and it will actually maintain it at that temperature. It'll stop when you're there, and when it gets below that, it'll actually start up again. The only thing about that is the sensor is built into this display unit, and so it's not long enough to put it in the tent. So if you wanted to do that inside the tent, you would need to splice in your own wire. In an altitude mode, it will actually detect the altitude and adjust the performance of the engine to give it the most efficiency at your given altitude. So the app really expands how you can use this unit from the comfort of your own tent without having to get out and adjust it in the cold. Just make sure to download the app before you go out so you have it all connected already. Setup for Generation 2 is actually a lot more simpler and easier because that's largely due to the internal tank already being pre-installed. Where Generation 1, you had to do that yourself. Since that's already taken care of, setup is actually pretty minimal, and H Calorie gives you everything you need to do that. So let's briefly just show how to set this up. You want to attach your exhaust to the exhaust flex tubing here and then attach it to your exhaust output port there. You could also clamp it down if you choose to do that as well. Now on this exhaust, you'll notice that there is a little port right here at the bottom. That's supposed to be angled downward whenever you do set this up to allow condensation to flow out. Next you have your flange and your duct. You're going to want to attach that to the clean air outtake there where the heat comes out. Now you can also put some clamps on here, and if you need to get a longer kind of duct, you can get 4-inch duct, and along with those clamps, it'll secure it nicely. On the other side, you have your intake here, so you're going to want to take your intake muffler and attach it to this little tubing here, then attach it to the front of that intake tube. You will need to clamp this one shut so it's nice and secure, or else it can easily fall off. They also give you these little holders which you can attach to the front here, and that will uphold your ports like so. Once you're all set up, just fill it up with diesel and you're ready to go. Now let's talk about the use and the heat. When you're ready to use, press and hold the power button down and this will start up your unit. Once you get started, you can adjust to your desired heat. You do have 10 levels, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. You can adjust it to your liking. Now it is important to note that upon startup, you will notice some black smoke that comes from the exhaust for a little bit. This is completely normal. It's really just burning off a coating of the elements from those things, and it will go away soon. And so let it go through that cycle, and then you'll notice that it'll clear up. When it's time to shut it down, make sure to hold down the power button, and then it's going to go through a shutdown cycle. It's important you allow it to do that and don't unplug it. This goes through a shutdown process and allows it to burn stuff off, and this will take about 5 minutes. So let's take out the unit and try it out in the field. All right, so I have it plugged in, ready to go, gas and everything. And so we're going to go ahead and power it on. And what it's going to need to do first is it's going to have to prime that pump. So you're going to hear a tick for about 30 seconds, and then the fuel will start going through the system and producing heat. To prime it, you're going to want to just hold down that power button. You can hear the motor coming on. So you have different temperature settings that you have, and you can hear that fuel pump tick putting in the fuel. All right, so as you can see, it's working, and there is some exhaust coming from there. All right, I can feel some air coming out of the exhaust here. And I'm gonna go up inside the tent. I have it all closed and everything. And as you can see, this is an 8-foot duct, and it's going right into the tent there. And so hopefully in this soon, that's gonna keep it nice and warm compared to out here. It's nice and foggy and kind of cold. So this is gonna be nice to be able to camp out with the heater on and go from there. All right, so this is pretty awesome, just how warm it is in here. It feels about 72 degrees in here, and I have the fan right here coming up from this little area, and man, that is warm. So anyways, I think this is an awesome thing to add to a tent. And with H Calorie, they actually make it very affordable to do compared to some other heaters that are out there. So check it out. Definitely impressed by this and definitely gonna enjoy my sleep tonight, staying nice and warm in the tent. So concluding thoughts, overall, this is an excellent setup here with Generation 2. It's a great upgrade compared to Generation 1. And this is something that's always gonna go in my winter overlanding setup. And I think this is a great buy really because the pros outweigh the cons. The first pro is it's simpler and it's easier to get started. And that's largely the case because the tank is pre-assembled, the fuel lines are attached, and all you have to do is add fuel and set it up and you're good to go. Another pro is the tank being internal. That gives it better balance as well as easier to transport. Another big pro is the price. Compared to other heaters out there, this is like a third of the price. Considering all the features you are getting, this is an awesome bang for your buck. Another pro is that automatic altitude adjustment. That's really helpful as far as giving you the best efficiency for your unit. Another pro is compared to Generation 1, this is a lot quieter. The ticking sound isn't as obvious compared to Generation 1. Another big pro is the upgraded app. This really makes this unit shine by giving it all the different modes and customizable features you can use from the comfort of your tent. Now there are a few cons and they're very minor in my opinion. The first con is overall it's just a bigger unit compared to Generation 1, but that is accounting for that internal tank. Another con is compared to other higher priced heaters out there, there is still a noticeable ticking, but it's nowhere near as loud as Generation 1. So what did you think of the H Calorie Toolbox 2 diesel heater? Is this something you're gonna add to your overlanding setup? Leave me a comment in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts. If you like what you saw, make sure to give me a thumbs up. Also subscribe for more overlanding content like this. And as always, thanks for watching.